So there are several advantages with cord blood. There are a few limitations, and that is the donor's not around for a second donation. If the first bone marrow transplant doesn't work out well, typically they go back to the donor and get more bone marrow. Well, with cord blood, you can't do that. You've got one shot, and if something happens that doesn't work, then you need to find another source. And also for things, some therapies where they follow up with a donor lymphocyte infusion subsequent to the bone marrow donation, again, we don't have that available with cord blood. And also, because of the restricted number of hematopoietic stem cells per cord blood unit, it does result in delayed engraftment. So typically with bone marrow, you get your neutrophil engraftment at around 15 days post-transplant versus the timing post-cord blood transplant, it can be on the order of 24, 26 days. So it's that extra few days where the patient is at risk for developing infections, and it's not beneficial for the patient. So a lot of work is being done to devise ways to improve engraftment time with cord blood. And one of the strategies they've started using is 2005, there was a report on double cord transplants. Well, if one cord for an adult is okay, would it be better if we gave them two cords? And the results was that it did improve cord blood engraftment, but not the timing of it. So adults do seem to be doing better if they receive a double cord transplant, but there's still delayed engraftment, which is seen. And I'll go into, later in my talk, discussion into efforts underway to improve cord blood transplant using expansion technology of the hematopoietic stem cells, and then also small molecules to improve homing to the bone marrow. So these are things that are in development right now, which I'll touch base on. So cord blood today, I mentioned earlier in 2000, 1,000 cord blood units had been used in transplants. Today, over 20,000 transplants have been performed using cord blood for life-threatening diseases. And I've got the list here, including leukemias, multiple myeloma, myelodysplastic disorders, anemias, hemoglobinopathies, and metabolic disorders, inherited metabolic disorders. So it's being used, for a number of different conditions and seeing some success. I should say lots of success. It's used most often still in the pediatric population. These are numbers put out by the National Marrow Donor Program in the U.S. So these are, which is equivalent to the One Match, which is run by Canadian Blood Services. So these are the group. NMDP is the group that manages matches and transplantations. Just finding donors in the U.S. So on the left here we have the pediatric recipients, and that's 2009 data. This last bar here, don't need to worry about the numbers, except about 45% of pediatrics, so less than the age of 18, those requiring bone marrow transplant, they're using cord blood as the stem cell source. And you can see how it's grown over time. And similarly with adults over here, it's just over 10% of adults are being transplanted with cord blood, as compared to the green is peripheral blood stem cells and bone marrow. What's interesting, this is 2005 right here, and it was after 2005 when the report on the double cord blood transplants in adults was reported. And since then, the number of adults being transplanted with cord blood has increased with some success. So year after year, we're seeing increased utilization of cord blood in transplants.
That's Canadian data?
Sorry, that is the US data. That was data from the NMDP. In Canada last year, I'm trying to think, there were numbers reported by Canadian Blood Services. They said 800 people were in need of transplant last year, and 93 cord blood units were actually imported into the country and used last year. And right now, we don't have, without a national cord blood program, we don't have our own internal cord blood that we can draw upon. So most of them do come from outside the country. So how is cord blood banked? So first of all, and this is just walking you through the procedure, and I'll show you some slides from our lab on how it's actually manipulated in the lab. The cord blood, first, it's collected after the cord has been clamped. This is a picture showing the needle going in. The cord blood is drained into a collection bag with an anticoagulant. It's mixed, packaged, sent off to the processing lab, and then put into liquid nitrogen storage tanks for long-term storage. Now I'm just curious, has anyone here been involved with the cord blood collection? Yeah. Oh, excellent. So you guys get the messy end, because when it comes to us in the lab, it's in a nice, clean bag, which, you know, like every now and then there's blood on the outside, however. We deal with that. So we start with this end versus the messier end that you guys deal with. Once it comes into the lab, in the bag, we add an agent, pentaspan, which helps remove, sediment the red blood cells. After that, it goes into a centrifuge, slow speed spin, and which separates the blood into RBCs, a buffy coat, and the plasma layer. And the stem cells reside in the buffy coat layer. So at that point, we take it, we put it in a plasma expressor, we have a transfer pack attached to it, and the plasma and the buffy coat are then transferred into the transfer pack. After that, it undergoes a hard speed spin to pellet all the cells, and leaving behind the residual RBCs that are carried over, and the buffy coat, which are packed now, and the plasma on top. After that, the plasma is expressed, leaving behind residual RBCs and the stem cells, the buffy coats. We add a cryoprotectant to the cells, and then the cord blood at that point is packaged into a cassette, and then it's frozen under a controlled rate freeze. It's programmed so that it's a slow freezing, which takes it down to -80. So it's frozen at that point. In the storage tank, it goes into a rack, the cassette into a rack, and then into the liquid nitrogen tank. And there it's stored at temperatures below -150 degrees. And at that point, we have, again, going back to Hal Broxmeyer's work, he's demonstrated that cord blood stored at 24 years retain all of its ability to, the stem cells are still there and viable as they were when it went into the tank 24 years earlier. And speaking to cryobiologists, if you store at this temperature, they say indefinitely, or at least a few thousand years. So they're very stable. As long as the temperature is maintained, it's very stable.